Good morning. We'd like to welcome you to the BmoreNews Morning Show. Marcia Jews, how are you?
Good morning. I'm fabulous. How's everybody? And happy Umoja. Today is the third day of Kwanzaa.
Abaragani to you.
Abaragani.
Abaragani.
Yes.
Kevin, good morning.
Good morning. Hope you guys are having an amazing morning. I am myself over here, as Marcia said, celebrating Ujima, and so happy to be participating in a collective work with you all this morning. So thank you for having me.
Good deal. Neil Dubo, how are you? Welcome to the panel.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having me. Good to see you again and good to see everybody else. Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, whatever you celebrate, Festivus, whatever it is.
All of the above.
And happy holidays.
All of the above. And you know what? Just being able to celebrate something feels good in this year.
No question.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning, China.
Senator McCray.
So, Senator, we have two lawyers, a businesswoman, and a media mogul on the panel with me interviewing you today. So, welcome to the BmoreNews Morning Show.
Oh wow! I didn't know it was going to be this intense.
All that.
But I got my game face on now. You got me game ready now, Donnie.
But you were always ready, Senator. So just so y'all know, this is my senator. So I'm just.
I know that's right.
You will not be objective.
Like, I got this shut down already.
Oh no, I am object. Oh, he knows that. Yeah, he knows me.
He knows the beating comes from love.
He knows me.
Well, Senator McCray is the senator where my real estate project is for American Communities Trust.
So, Senator, what I wanted to ask you off of the break is that when you first got into politics, you became a delegate. And now, just want to let you know, Senator, we're friends and all, but this is a hardball interview. Brooke Learman was on here last week, and we had to keep it real. But when you first went into running for the state senate, there was Senator McFadden there, and at first Delegate Cheryl Glenn stepped out and challenged him, but then she stepped back, and then you stepped up, and you've been getting haters ever since. What happened?
Haters.
You know what, Donnie? First, just want to say that I'm honored and humbled to be able to join you all today. I think that's very, very important to say. Happy Monday. Just to put it in context for those folks that may not know me, I know it's a couple of folks who do know me. A young man that's born and raised in the city of Baltimore. I live in Overly. I live there with my wife, Demetria, and I have 4 kids, Kennedy, Reagan, CJ, and Bryson. Electrician out of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, so went through a 5-year apprenticeship program. Entrepreneur, been buying houses up and down Bel Air Road since I was 20 years of age. But most importantly, also elected official, having the honor of representing the 45th Legislative District in the Maryland State Senate at this moment. I always tell folks that I got my training wheels in the House of Delegates. I spent 4 years there, worked on issues such as expanding apprenticeship opportunities for young men, young women in the city of Baltimore, voting rights for those folks that were on probation, did not have the right to vote until 2016, but that happened because of legislation that we put forward, and then went into the Maryland State Senate and did not let any grass grow under my feet. We worked on the minimum wage. Raised the minimum wage up to $15 an hour over a period of time. We saw the first one kick in, $10.10 to $11 on January 1st. Worked on issues such as food deserts, transportation, education, residency requirements for our Baltimore City Police Department, liquor stores, reducing hours for these liquor establishments that have high crime and high crime areas that have violent crimes that's happening around them, reducing the hours instead of being open from 6 a.m. to 2 a.m., now open from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. In these areas. I'll stop right there and then I'll comment on what you talked about in reference to going to the Maryland General Assembly and the State Senate. And I think that it's very important to say that I love to be a student of history and politics in general. And I would also like to say I still periodically talk to Senator McFadden. I want to say probably every 2 weeks, because at the end of the day, he made a number of contributions to the city of Baltimore, not just in the Maryland State Senate, but also being on the city council. And I think that he has opportunities to offer up to me to be able to learn from some of the things that he may not have been able to done. And how do we make sure we keep this transition going in the right direction is the most important to me. And I think that when we look through that type of lens, not just the Cory McCray or Senator McFadden win, but the entire city win. So that answers your question incomplete.
You don't have nothing else to say? Sure.
You know what? Because Donnie jumped right into it this month. You went right in there.
I don't know. It sounds like you might have missed a couple of things.
Senator, what work are you most proud of that you have been able to accomplish in 2020?
You know what? Being intentional is very important to me, and having the opportunity to be able to think about what does wealth building look like in the communities that I represent. What does it look like from Black wealth to that extent? So I always say, while we think about the large things and how the large things always make this greatest impact, it's the smaller things to me, making sure that young people have kids. You're making sure that young people have books in their hands to read. Make sure that our young people can be very intentional about the books that they read, because I have 4 children. So we can talk about reducing the hours of liquor stores is one of the things. Making sure that we're intentional about the people that's policing our communities are actually from and of the community is very important to me. But most importantly, how do I interact with these young people, and what type of influence do I leave with them as I impact their lives? China, I'm going to go to this one reason why I think that's so important, and then I'm going to stop talking.
You mean the piece, because you're saying that the most important thing that you feel that you've been able to accomplish in 2020 was reducing the hours for the, I guess, liquor stores in the hot spots areas?
These are some of the larger ones, but just to put it in context, these young people is the most important to me, because I think that they have the greatest thing on their side, which is time. But I remember growing up in elementary, middle school, when I was coming up at that time, our mayor was Kurt Smoke and our city council president was Lawrence Bell. Now, I can't remember in what context and everything that they said during these visits when they came to Rocknell Heights or West Baltimore Middle, but I do remember that they had a presence within my school. And that was one of the things that I just wanted to emulate if given that opportunity. How do I consistently stay in these schools? How do I consistently impact lives? So the question that you asked, what is the largest thing that I feel like I've accomplished, is a consistent presence with our young people, just trying to show them the leadership that I believe they deserve.
But in 2020, schools were closed down as of, I think, March. So, and they really still haven't opened back up yet. They're still virtual. So when you say being present in the schools, that's how were you present in the schools in 2020?
So it's a great point to make. I think that because they're virtual, we have to also go to where they're at. So I've been reaching out to the principals. We typically meet with our principals on a quarterly basis, but also making sure that I stay in 1 or 2 of my schools every week. So visiting NAV, visiting Baltimore International Academy, visiting Hamilton, visiting Fort Worthington, and making sure that these young people in these schools, and then that way we get the opportunity to see what our teachers are going through. So I didn't realize that a lot of black screens, like I get to see you all's faces. I get to see how I'm connecting with you all. Some of our schools, some of our teachers have a little bit tougher because they don't get to see the face. Sometimes they only get to see the black screen. Then you ask the question, why is it that they only get that kids don't want to show their faces? Maybe it's because they don't want to show folks the living conditions that they are in at the moment.
And this is what you mean by black screen, right?
And that's what I mean by not a black screen. Maybe it's because their parent and their other siblings are in their home. It's a number of reasons why this could be, but actually when you get to interface with them in that capacity, it helps you to understand and you get to see from a digital learning standpoint how the internet connection isn't always there. So when it may go out. So imagine how our young people feel when that goes out. So I love talking, whether it's kindergarten, whether it's my seniors, just best to drop knowledge and jewels on them. And like I said, again, I think that that's the largest impact that I've made and try to show that type of leadership.
I think one of the things that you just mentioned is, and I did a whole thing, you've got to go up on Baltimore City voters, because there's like 200 comments about what I'm saying about connectivity. and what we're doing or not doing, and the money that we need to have invested in the year 2020. We should not be talking about the digital divide anywhere in this city. And if children have to come from home, they need to have the resources available. And Senator, I would ask that you go and look up intelligentcommunity.org. It's we'll talk about it a little bit more offline, but they travel around the world looking for the cities that are doing the most innovation in connecting their citizens to the internet. And they're doing it primarily at no charge. So we've got a long way to go. And our children who have been coming out of some of these schools, not all of the schools, but some of these schools functionally illiterate. And how do we make that a priority and change, doing a paradigm shift on that whole educational system?
Can I just make a comment on that, Marsha? I love that you asked that question.
Donnie, you're muted.
Hold off.
Donnie, you're muted.
We can't hear you, Donnie.
He wants me to hold off.
I was going to tell him. He sounds better that way.
I'll stop. Senator McCray, please.
We asked a question. Marsha asked him a question.
Mm-hmm.
I thought she was making a comment in reference to the intelligent communities, but if you could repeat the question, I don't mind jumping into it.
Well, I'm just really talking about the internet connectivity for our community and how all of our children need to have devices and they need to have connectivity by any means necessary. Our priority in this city, if we can build a whole city within a city in Port Covington, then we can certainly take that same billions of dollars and put it on an infrastructure in the holes that people keep redigging at least 12 times and put internet connectivity in the pipes. And that's
okay. So I guess the question, Senator, is what about internet connectivity for our young people? Do all of our young people have access to the internet in Baltimore City?
Yeah, so I'm going to comment on a couple things and what I've learned over periodically in reference to this. First, all of our young people should have some form of devices, and if they don't have devices, feel free to reach out to my office. My phone number is 410-841-3165. I answer my own emails, but it's cory.mccray@senate.state.md.us. What you'll find is if they go to a traditional school, Donnie, that they should be able to get a hotspot or they should be able to get a computer from North Avenue. If they go to one of our charter schools, the charter schools are the ones that are given the computers directly. One of the experiences that I went through this past, I want to say maybe it's happened more around, I want to say August or September when school was just about to start. One of the parents up in the 43rd district had reached out to me to say that their kid didn't have a device. And I said, well, that's an easy one. You should be able to get your device from North Avenue. I connected her with the folks down at North Avenue, and I didn't realize that she went to a charter school. I didn't realize that charter schools had operated differently. They had gotten the CARES dollars directly to the school, and the school was then charged with purchasing the respective equipment. Come to find out, over at Green Street Academy, they had a gap in reference to how many devices that they have. So this is a school with about 800, 900 students. So it's not the 300-400 that we traditionally know of. It's over in the 41st.
That's Warnock School.
I'm not sure of that, but I know it's off of Hilton Road. Hilton
yeah, that's the guy that ran for mayor. Warnock with the pickup truck.
Yeah, so they had about a 300 person gap. So I reached out to Tisha Edwards over at this city and said, hey, teacher, can you get a device for the student? But then realizing that, Cory, you need to pick that phone back up and call that principal. It wasn't in my district, so I wasn't familiar as much with the school. But I reached out to the principal, realized that they have a gap of about 300 devices. This is back in August, September. And then, told the principal, just give me a couple days and let me see who I can reach out to help us figure out this puzzle, whether it's Kaiser, whether it's Care First, but ended up reaching out to Hopkins and asking Alicia Wilson over there, hey, can you help me close the gap that they have over at this school? They were able to get them the 300 computers that they needed for Green Street Academy. So I think that all that to say is that this story, it's important to reach out to your elected officials. it's important for our elected officials to realize that they are the conduits and that they have to step up. This isn't something that we can continue to just pass over, but we have to leverage our resources for our young people, our seniors, any vulnerable community to make sure that we can kind of do what's necessary to make sure that they thrive. Folks don't want to hear excuses. They just want to figure out how do you solve the respective problem. So when you
Senator, this is Neil. I have a quick question. You've spent a lot of time understandably focusing on what all the things that need to be done, and what needs to be done is substantial. I think we all agree on that. But I also know that in the most recent COVID package that was passed, there was no money for state and local governments. And I'm curious as to what resources are available going into 2021. We've obviously had a big drop in tax revenue. There's a lot that needs to happen and no help from Washington. Are there sufficient resources in the state budget to do all the things that we need to do while we see this out?
Yep. I'm going to finish closing in on Donnie's question, because I always like to make sure that I answer folks' questions completely and fully. So all I like to say is, in reference to the digital divide, if any young person needs a hotspot or a computer, they should be able to get it from North Avenue. And if they aren't, make sure that they reach out to their respective elected officials. And Neil, just in reference to that, I try my best to especially put it in a layman's terms so that folks back home know how important that their elected officials aren't out of reach. A lot of times people don't feel like they can connect with us because they feel like we're so far off that they're removed from us and don't feel like we're of the same community that they're from. So I try my best to give the problem, but also give the respective solutions so that they know there is a path forward. But you asked the question in reference to the CARES dollars and the most recent stimulus package. At this moment, to my knowledge, the president hasn't signed off on that package. So the one that was passed previously, there were a number of dollars that help with things like rental assistance and transportation and education and needs of capacity. So while you say that it isn't directly coming like specifically to fill gaps for state or local government, there are gaps in reference to services that are going to matriculate right back to the respective state of Maryland, and some of them are going to be directly to the respective local jurisdiction. So they may not be, hey, Baltimore City has this respective gap of 50 million or whatever going directly to them. But please know that when you're talking about unemployment insurance and the PUA that's going to be cut off December 31st, that package that you're talking about that goes to the respective state government. Rental assistance and making sure that the folks that are facing not foreclosures but being evicted at the moment, that comes back to the respective government pot. So if you just want to be a little bit more clear in reference to what you're talking about.
Yeah, I was referring more sort of to discretionary type spending and the fact that we obviously have a lot of unforeseen expenses where the dollars aren't allocated, and whether or not there's sufficient resources to deal with those. And by the way, I think the president signed the bill last night.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I understand everything that you're saying. Obviously, that's right about the unemployment insurance, and there are dedicated and assigned dollars for that purpose. I'm more curious about, we talk about the needs of the community, but Baltimore specifically, but statewide as well, and unforeseen expenses. And are there sufficient funds, since we're not going to get any help discretionary spending wise from DC, to be able to address those needs?
Yep. So I talked with our respective federal reps. I know that Senator Van Hollen, Kwesi, and Fume had texted me and named a number of the items that are coming back to our respective jurisdiction that more would benefit from the respective package that the House and Senate negotiated. And as you're telling me, new news to me that the president had signed as of last night. And those services are going to be very, very critical. Neil, I think that it's important, and I didn't highlight this when I did my intro, is that I'm one of 13 members of the Budget and Taxation Committee. And when I say one of 13, you have 47 members in the Senate, myself included, and you have those 13 members that are chopping up a $46 billion budget and a real opportunity to be very intentional about such. Then when we dig into those 13, you have 4 subcommittees. So you have the Business and Education, which Craig Zucker chairs. You have Health and Human Services, which Melanie Griffith chairs. You have the Capital, which Doug Peters chairs. But I got the humble opportunity to be able to chair what we call the Public Safety, Transportation, and Environment Subcommittee. and being able to dig into those policy matters, being able to set different budget language. And I only say that because there's a lot of leveraging that can go on in that respective committee, especially when you're talking about 13 people making decisions for over 6 million people across the state of Maryland. It's a distinct honor. I'm one of 2 Black members, Senator Griffith over in Prince George's. So we have a very, very strong responsibility. But Neil, I dug into the budget and tax piece because when we left the General Assembly in March, folks had forecasted that we were going to be under these very bleak conditions. The reality is Neil, that it's a lot better situation from a forecast revenue generation at this moment that we stand in December than how we were forecasting in a June or July. So I think that while we will face a number of challenges, I'm thankful for the federal stimulus piece of it. We're in a lot better shape than we were 6 months from a forecast standpoint.
That's good to know. Thank you.
What are 3 things that you think we need to be focused on to come back to Baltimore?
3 things that I try my best to be on is I keep using the word intentional, and I'll dig into that one a little bit, Miss Marsha, is I think that when we're talking about Baltimore City has a $4 billion budget, the state of Maryland has a $46 billion budget. How are we being very intentional in reference to the communities that need it the most? What do I mean by the communities that need it the most? I'm going to talk about New Broadway East. I'm going to say South Clifton Park. I'm going to say Berea. I'm going to say Darley Park. I'm going to say Oliver. I'm talking about communities where our community thrived at one point in time, but we've watched over decades of neglect and the lack of investment from city, state, and federal going back into these neighborhoods. When I say that we all pay taxes. So if there was the first thing that I would focus on, Ms. Marsh, is every dollar that's in that state budget, how are we being intentional? How are we making sure that there's an equity component to these dollars? The second piece that I will focus on, and I didn't realize this until I got into the legislature, was this education piece. This education piece is so important because if we look at our young people and how we can say that if you aren't at a certain point in your life in 3rd grade, then we're actually setting them. So when we talk about workforce, how can we even get to the workforce component if we're not even putting them out from a K through 12 and they're getting an adequate education that can be compared whether you're in Howard County, Anne Arundel County, or Baltimore City? You should be. That is our responsibility. Our responsibility is a budget, making sure that we're providing adequate education for our young people in K through 12. So the education component means a great bit to me. I think that just because of Baltimore City and the space that we share at this moment, we have to get in front of our public safety. Public safety it can mean so many things just in reference to how clean our city has something to do with our public safety. How well lit our city has something to do with public safety. How many abandoned homes that we have has something to do with public safety. How the workforce opportunities that we provide to our young men and young women indirectly impacts our public safety. I can go on and on and on, but to the 3 things that I try my best to wake up every day and make sure that I contribute to is being very intentional, making sure that we're contributing to education in the manner that we are supposed to, and thinking about how do we keep our neighbors and our friends and family members safe in our respective jurisdiction. If we cannot contribute to these 3 things, Ms. Marsha, unfortunately, what we're going to find and what is happening is folks are going to move to the adjacent jurisdictions because they may want to have fun in Baltimore. Right. So if you're born and raised, you love it. But if you just came here, you visited for a second, like, hey, I'm done having fun, I'm ready to go have a family, you're thinking about how do I keep my son and daughter safe, and you're thinking about the education that you provide to them. So those are the things that I think are very important.
It's huge. Thank you, sir.
Kavette, you were going to ask a question earlier. Did you still want to bring up that question?
Yeah, Marcia had mentioned education and with literacy in Baltimore City. And I, just love the fact that you brought up that you focus on making sure that even the young children are guided towards reading, because you have young kids in Baltimore City as well. Because one of the most disturbing things I think for me is to talk to, an adult from Baltimore and to hear that, oh, I only read, when I have to. And not choosing to read because you want to, or to expound, your thinking, your ideology, your understanding of how things work. And that's something that starts, I understand, in childhood. My children are readers, were avid readers, from the time that they were young, because we required it and it wasn't an option. But I'm very proud of them for that. And so I guess my question for you would be, how are you encouraging that in the community? And as you continue with this, making sure that there's a connection between the digital divide with our kids, ensuring that they are taking time to read a book, even getting away from their digital devices.
Now, Ms. Kane, I think that it's very, very important what you're saying. I think the first thing that we all can do is realize our power and just being a leader and leading by example. So that's the one thing that I try my best to do, lead by example, and then also respect the position that I have at this moment. As you talk, I'm currently reading Zora Neale Hurston. It looked like it's Dust Tracks on a Road. It was her memoir that she wrote I want to say several decades ago, but I'm reading this because my daughter had picked it out, and I just wanted to make sure that it's appropriate for her to be able to read. So I'm
right.
Awesome.
So
Right.
when I think about first, once you get past the leading by example, the next responsibility I have is to make sure that I take care of home. I'm very proud because Kennedy and Reagan, I got an 8th grader and a 6th grader. They're both Baltimore City students. They're in this program called Ingenuity. So I feel as though they're getting the first is well resourced, but they're being challenged in a manner that I believe that they should be challenged in from that standpoint. So that's very, very, very important to me. And then when I think about CJ and Bryson, they're 5 and 6, they're just kind of learning, and we're flowing through it. So once I get past leading by example, once I get past taking care of home, I think that especially as I speak to the students, one of the things is that Tanea over at NAF. And I remember speaking to Principal Lampkin, and as I'm asking questions, I try my best to just also push our young people. So what I'll ask of my young ladies, and I think I was speaking to a 10th grade class. So Tanea's in the 10th grade, and I say to her, because she asked me the question about politics, and I said, well, who's your favorite 3 women elected officials, past or present, at the moment? And at that moment, Tanea had became stumbled. So I let her know, please do not be discouraged. I typically like to just challenge because I like to be challenged. And she said she didn't know any. And I said, well, Tanea, I'm pretty sure you know a lot of them. And at that moment, I then ordered the book, Kamala Harris. She's got like a small chapter book for our young people, and mailed that, got her address and mailed that to her. We've been having a consistent discussion for the last 4 weeks. She wrote me a very honest response back, and she said, well, I really didn't think that I would like this book, but after I picked it up, I really, really enjoyed it and just wanted to take the opportunity to say that. So I'm always trying my best to make sure that they put people in front of them that look like them. I think about young people that say they want to be entrepreneurs. So I'll ask them, well, do you know A.G. Gaston? Do you know Reginald F. Lewis? Do you know Herman Russell? It's so many of them out there that have exhibited, but our young people just don't know about them. And I think that we have that responsibility. And I think that one of the greatest ways that we can do that is through books. I'm going to shout Donnie out because we always go back and forth and text back and forth about good books, just in reference to especially a person that loves history and a student of history. I'm very thankful. And if you have a couple that you would like to recommend, Ms. Kane, I always say, please move forward. And one thing I'll do periodically, I did it last night on all of my social media mediums, I'll kind of show what have I been reading for the last several months, just so that folks can kind of highlight and maybe we can have some good discussion about it.
Awesome. Well, my personal recommendations at this time, I'm reading the books by both of the Obamas. I just got President Obama's A Promised Land, which I'm reading with a group of my closest female friends, and we're discussing that book. I've been reading Michelle's Becoming book on my own. I started that last year because I read, various, chapters and pick, parts of different books based on what I'm doing research on, as well as for my personal development. But I personally have made it a part of my morning routine to make sure that I get a book every day. So I'm very happy to hear that.
I've got a very deep appreciation for Michelle Obama, especially after reading her book. I think I actually like a little bit more than I like Barack. After reading
Well, you
that
haven't read his book yet.
I haven't even read his book. I read a couple of Barack books, but that Michelle book was honest, more honest than how elected officials will go into.
I love
There
this
you
book.
go. That's
I
it.
love this book. I'm reading it now.
In the beginning of that book, what really brought me in.
Time out, Miss Kane. Miss Kane, I see there's a lot of love for Barack Obama. Senator, what did he do for the Black community?
What did he do in reference to the Black community? I think that obviously healthcare is very important, and I think that we should recognize that healthcare is very important. A number of presidents before him had tried to tackle healthcare, but always fell short in reference to addressing this issue. I think that when you look at a number of issues that plague our community, especially with this COVID-19, lifting it up at this moment, that health is very important. So while I myself may be considered like I have a Cadillac health plan, I think that it was President Barack Obama who got it across the finish line to make sure that more people had health care than when he started office. And I think that's one of the biggest attributes that he could make directly, especially to the African-American community.
Okay, well, Senator, we have the General Assembly coming up in January. What's top on the agenda for you? What's top on the agenda for Baltimore City?
Yep. So if I'm going to talk about as a whole, I'm going to dig into Baltimore City, and then I'm going to work my way to what I'm working on, if that's okay. In reference to the General Assembly, first we're going to have to deal with a number of overrides that was in front of us. One of them is in reference to the Kerwin Commission, the $4 billion investment that's going to be made to the state of Maryland to make sure that our young people can not just thrive in the city of Baltimore, the state of Maryland, but globally across the country. We're also going to have to pay for this, Donnie, and there's a number of taxes that was put that was vetoed by the governor. One of them was the tobacco tax, so raising the cost of tobacco on the tobacco tax. One of them is digital advertising. So when you see through your Facebook, when you see through your YouTube, the advertising that's happening, and then digital downloads. Right now, if you buy a book, as we saw that Ms. Kane and Ms. Hughes both showed us hard books, they are taxed. But unfortunately, if you download a book, you're not paying a tax on that. So we're going to move more towards a 21st century economy and reference to our taxes. You're also going to see a number of COVID-19 reliefs. Not only were we talking about small businesses and how they were impacted, but also rental assistance, food insecurity, digital. When we did the Kerwin Commission bill, you will see that the digital divide wasn't one of the largest considerations, but I think that you're going to find that we're going to take this as a very hard issue when we go back in the General Assembly. In reference to public safety and police accountability is going to be on the top of the list. You saw that there were work groups, not just in the House, but also Chairman Will Smith led in reference to that piece of it. So overrides, taxes, police accountability, education, COVID-19, center of just the generic overview. In reference to the city, we have a new mayor at the moment. We have Mayor Brandon Scott. Looking forward to getting the mayor's agenda. I believe that we have a meeting on the 5th, just as the Senate, not the 5th, the 7th, just as a Senate delegation, but waiting for the mayor to put forward his respective priorities. So we know that what we'll be focusing on in the General Assembly. Some of the things that I believe that are important, and some of the bills that I'll be putting forward, is dealing with transportation is one of the big ones. Making sure that the MTA, which is the Baltimore region, we watched as the Washington metro area has been a big benefactor of the Purple Line, the WMATA, and we're looking at a significant amount of revenue that's being siphoned out of our transportation, but moving to that respective region. So we have a bill that says that every certain amount of capital investment going into our respective region in reference to making sure that our buses not just are getting there on time, are reliable, but making sure that they don't break down, Donnie, which is very important. So capital investment in our transportation. The second one is in reference to highway user revenue. So highway user revenue is basically the potholes and the state resources that we receive back from the state of Maryland to our respective local jurisdictions. We saw as this was cut, I want to say back in 2011 under the O'Malley administration, but working with a number of the jurisdictions. So I'll be cross-filing this with a delegate from the Eastern Shore, Carl Anderton, from the other from the Republican Party, because this isn't just a Democratic issue, Republican issue. This is a state of Maryland issue, and we're trying our best to make sure that our resources come back to our respective neighborhoods dealing with transit. MES, because I chair PSTE, I'll be dealing with the MES. For those folks, I shouldn't use Environmental Services Agency. We saw with Roy Graff a number of challenges that came out of that agency, and making sure that so I'll be having the MES Reform Act of 2021, making sure that the board makeup and things of that nature is very important. I'm also going to be digging into food deserts. This is something that weighs very heavy on me. Right there in the Oliver community, we saw that another Save-A-Lot had closed. So looking for a creative way to be able to leverage and address the healthy food options that are not there in a number of the communities that I represent. So what do I mean by that? There are a number of chain stores, supermarkets that are looking to serve beer and wine in their respective store, and trying to leverage that to make sure that we can kind of put a healthy food option on that space of it. So thinking about from a profit margin, a lot of times they're saying that they aren't making any form of a profit in the respective supermarkets, making sure that they know that if you want this license to be able to do this, the only place that you will be able to do this is in food deserts or places that lack this opportunity. So hoping to creatively create this opportunity from it. Donnie, I work on a number of things, so I can't remember each and everything that I'll put forward, but I'll ask the analyst. I think I've requested 23 bills, and so far I'm sure that I'm going to do 20 of those 23 bills, and I think that I have about 7 or 8 of them that have been pre-filed. Some of them are stuff that has been, and this is the one that I'm gonna close on, because these methadone clinic and the one right there at Bel Air North Avenue is one of the greatest frustrations that I have. So I've every year I always tried to put in bills that address the public safety and just the community space of how we address mental health or behavioral health, I should say, not mental health.
Senator, I think that Donnie is asking you, why is the methadone clinic such a big issue?
Why is it? Because I think that they don't respect the community in a manner that it should be respected in. I think that anybody that's doing business in anyone's community should be talking through with the community. I think they should be respectful of the community. I think that one of the things is that this is the largest methadone clinic, not just in the city of Baltimore, not just in the state of Maryland, but one of the largest ones in the country. They're serving about 3,000 to 4,000 people. And when we think about that, that's like having a shopping mall in a neighborhood. So how do you look at transit? How do you look at parking? How do you think about safety? How are they keeping their patrons safe? They've been under consent decree with the Maryland Department of Health at a point in time. This was about 6 or 7 years ago, from the lines that were forming outside of the respective establishment. So some of the things that I think about is, and this is a very, very heavily policed, so a lot of folks are scared of this because of the ADA challenges that it meets. So just making sure that we as a city or we as a state don't discriminate against folks that have a disability, and that's wrong. To discriminate against folks that have a disability is wrong. But we also have to be respectful of that community because they're losing value in their real estate. You see that a number of folks are moving out and they're not moving back in. So we're watching that community decimate because of the respective establishment that's right there in that neighborhood. What's some of the things that I've been able to put forward, or some of the things that I hope that will go forward this respective year? One of them is in reference to when they go with the feds, and the information and the documentation that they have to go with, submit to the feds, they submit a community plan. But the reality is that, and they submit it to the agency, and they say how they're going to interact with the community. What are they going to do with the community? But this information isn't moved on to the state level or the local level. So the community don't even know what they put in the application to say how they're going to be able to handle that. We want to create a transparent way to make sure that MDH also gets a copy of that, and they cannot get the respective licensure from MDH until they provide the plan that they said to the feds, their accredited agency, that they were going to do it.
Could I ask a quick question on that note? We talked quite a bit about community organizations and how, you know, they've been fading out in Baltimore. So is there a way that you would be able to have the community associations within your district get that information? You have someone who's heading that up to be able to, you know, work in liaison, I guess, with those organizations?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to remember your question, Ms. Kane. I'm going to close out on the other piece of it. One of the other things is in this 2020 election, we watched that organization participate in our elections a little bit heavier than normal. So what they were doing was they were bundling campaign donations of $30,000 for respective candidates that were running. I find that wrong. The only people that really at this moment bundles is typically developers. We don't usually see folks bundling that type of money. And in the city of Baltimore, a campaign can only cost possibly $30,000 or $40,000. So they basically can purchase a campaign, is what we're finding, and they're getting those dollars because of Medicaid. So typically, if they were a vendor of the state of Maryland, they would have to fill out forms to be able to say why that they were making these contributions to the respective candidates. But because they're receiving them as a Medicaid payment, it's not looked at as a direct vendor. So what we'll be doing is treating them the behavioral in Maryland. Now I'm going to over to your question in reference to community associations, Ms. Kane. I have a number of strong community associations. Whether they get the resources that they're supposed to be getting the last several decades is a different question. I know that Ms. Doris Monaterell in New Broadway doing what they're supposed to do.
Ain't playing.
I know that Miss Lenora over in Berea is doing what she's supposed to do. I know that Miss Sadie in the 4x4 is doing what she's supposed to do. Miss Rita Cruz and Bella Addison. So I have strong community associations. The challenges is that they do not get the fiscal and the level of support that's commanded of them, whether they live in Roland Park or they live in these other types of neighborhoods. I think they're first because I can make a number of excuses, but I'm not a person to make excuses. One of the things that I try my best to exhibit is just basically strong leadership and making sure, once again, I go back to the question that Ms. Marsha asked in reference to what is important to you. One of them is that I'm very intentional. So when you see the bond bills or you see the capital dollars that's flowing back into the city, because I've respectfully sit on that budget and taxation committee, I want to make sure that we're lifting up people such as Ms. Monaterell. I want to make sure that we're lifting up people such as Ms. Lenore. And so I believe that they haven't been getting the investment that they were supposed to. But I think that we as elected officials, we're the ones that's cutting the budget. So we can always make sure. And what happens too is because as these communities are moving or shifting in different directions, sometimes the other communities may have the bandwidth, or they may have other different resources to be able to get to those respective resources. But that does not mean that we should ignore the people that need it the most, or the community that need it the most, to kind of keep them on that level playing field. So the question, once again, that you ask is, why aren't they doing it? I think that it all depends on leadership.
I want to add just one thing about
that's troubling, Senator, because we're in a 9-1 Democratic city where Black people every election are pushed. They'll put signs on North Avenue, vote Democrat. But now you're telling me that the #1 supporter of the Maryland Democratic Party is the least and last to get funded. That's baffling.
I think that it's very important to know, no matter what party you belong to, is you have to put forward the best candidates. So there are a number of people that run in these primary elections. Donnie, it's not just 1 or 2 people that's running. It's 9 or 10 people that's running in these respective elections. And what happens is, and that's another importance of when we talk about that methadone clinic, you can't buy elections for 30 or 40,000 because that silences the voices of those folks that may not have the resources as the other people. It may silence the voices of people that may not have the same form of name ID because they may be twice as younger as the folks that's there. So I don't think that that's more of a democratic issue. It's just in reference to making sure that the people that we put forward in these positions meet some form of a qualification or basic function, because and stop electing people off of a popularity contest.
maybe I'm not explaining myself. Let me give you another scenario. Baltimore City Public Schools. Back in 1973, the Maryland State Lottery was promised to bring money for education. When Governor Martin O'Malley was in office, a new legislation came down for money from table gambling, casinos. Yet we have schools in Baltimore City with icicles on the windows. And all I'm asking is, why do we, Black people, vote for a party that treats us like stepchildren?
So, Donnie, I'm gonna jump in there because you make two very important points, and I just want to make sure that we have clarity in reference to both of these issues. I'm going to work my way over from the table gaming, the lottery, and what we have in front of us with sports betting in reference to how we fund education, and then I want to move to a part in reference to some of the challenges that Baltimore City deals with, just in general. We should realize that these are very, very large, challenging issues that are in front of us. So when we talk about table gaming, and I wasn't there at the moment, but I will take some form of responsibility because I'm there at this moment. We have to make sure that the language that's being put forward in front of us is talking about that it's on top of. So when they did table gaming or they did gambling, that monies was basically to say that this money would come from the Education Trust Fund. So it did just that. It came from the Education Trust Fund, but what happens on the back end was it was being cut from the general fund. Education has traditionally always been resourced from the general fund. It's always been 100% resource from the general fund. So when we made up the Education Trust Fund and these resources were coming there, while 40% may have been coming from the Education Trust Fund, you might have saw where it was 55% now coming from the respective general fund. This issue was addressed, I want to say, back in 2017, where we lockboxed and said that this money has to come on top of it. So we have to be cognizant of the language that's being used in reference to how we say we're funding these respective things that are priorities or important to us. So from a lottery standpoint, what you brought up, from a casino standpoint, from a table game standpoint, and the one that we have in front of us right now is sports betting. Sports betting is going to pass. We passed it on a referendum. But how it's funded, we have to be cognizant of the language that's there for that. And you can have Republicans or people is very, very important, Donnie. I see that you're trying to get another question in, so I'm gonna move because you may be telling me quicker. But it's very important to recognize that Baltimore City Schools deals with a number of issues. So we do not deal with poverty. Our poverty is highest among the other 23 jurisdictions, and that should be recognized.
Which makes me wonder why they would pay a school CEO $350,000 a year. You know what I mean? For an inferior product. You don't have any money.
You asking other questions as we deal with one question. So we also deal with ethos. So we have as the immigrant population grows, we're dealing with one of the highest ESOL students. So you have those two functions. You're dealing with the oldest capital and structure. I'm glad that we just had the 23 to 28 new schools that came online because our school buildings were older than any of the other jurisdictions that were in front of us at this moment, Donnie, which is a very, very important thing to recognize. As we have a dwindling population, most people will recognize that as you have more people, you're able to help with services. But as the population loss happens for Baltimore City, that's also affecting our student population, and we're losing over a period of time. The next thing that you brought up was Dr. Santelises. I actually enjoy Dr. Santelises at the moment. I think that she's one of the most effective CEOs that we've had over a long period of time. One of the things that we'll recognize is that when we go back to the General Assembly in all jurisdictions, not just in the state of Maryland, across the country, are going to lose population. Donnie, ours is going to be in the middle. It's not going to be at the highest at what we're usually seeing. We're going to actually be at the middle. I think that we're down about 1.7 in reference to attendance for our schools at the moment. And I think that Dr. Santelises should be lifted up at that moment because that was a very very aggressive effort to make sure that our young folks have the technology, making sure that they actually know how to use the technology, making sure that we're talking to the parents to engage the students from that standpoint. We've also watched as our grades. So she's a big, I think that we're falling short on CTE, which is very important to me. But from an academic standpoint, also, you've watched Baltimore City's grades over the last 2 or 3 years move in the right direction for our young people. So these are the things that I'm kind of watching. I'm watching the metrics. I'm watching the enrollment. I'm watching the academics and how we're performing from that standpoint. And also, what are the support systems that we're setting up for our to be able to thrive from that standpoint. I see you with your glasses down, but I could also email you that information that I'm looking at just to make sure what we're supposed to do.
I have one last question that I can't, it's burning inside, and I don't know that answer. Is the red line dead? Totally?
I think at this moment, I always worry about the things that are in my control. Is a very, very big thing. And that's one of the things that I tell people. But I also shoot the shot at goals that I think are realistic. At this moment, with the respective executive, the red line at this moment will not be happening. That could always change depending on who the executive is, 2022, but we have to focus on, I think that from a transportation standpoint, we watch capital dollars that are coming in and the lack thereof. Happening. It's a corridor study from east to west and north to south that just happened, and making sure we are going to get resources, that we're paying attention to that piece of it, Ms. Marsha. And then there are a number of other things that we can kind of set up. But I think that because of the red line, we were actually knocked back. I want to say at least 10 years in reference to what we're going, because when it was taken away from us, it also wasn't a plan put forward in reference to how we move. So even though you removed it, it was nothing that was put forward to say, here's how we're going to deal with transportation. And what happens with thriving cities, they have good transportation systems. They're moving people and flowing. The flow of traffic is moving around. What we were handed was saying that, hey, we're going to set up a really nice MTA system. And even the MTA system is falling short because just, I want to say 3 or 4 months ago, they was talking about cutting resources from that, which we had to push back and say, no, you can't stop the express line. No, you can't stop doing it. And then they kind of punted and went back and said, you know what, we found the money. We're going to cut something else for that. But all we're doing right now is just kind of holding steady. And that's tragic. It's wrong from that standpoint. But I think that if we're not going to get leadership from the executive on transportation, we have to make sure that as a delegation, we're collectively working together to figure out how to at least maintain and get resources for transportation, hopefully for when and start planning.
We need them because we're talking about employment. And when I was actually working for somebody else, I had an employee that couldn't get to work half the time and was always late. And no matter how early they got in or what, it was always an issue. We don't have enough of those things rolling.
Ms. Marsha, it's a study that was just done. I'm going to say this comment to Donnie. It was a study that was just done that said that only 9% of the jobs from our public transit at the moment can be reached within an hour. So it would take 60 minutes or less, and you can only reach 9% of the jobs that are here in the Baltimore region.
Shameful.
Yeah, a really quick question, Senator McCray. We're about to enter the first year in a long, long time with a Senate that's not led by Mike Miller. How is that going to change? How seismic a shift is that going to be? What does that look like? Because I don't think any of us really know.
So it's a great question. So for folks home that maybe watch,
Mike Miller was a bully, Senator. He was a bully, particularly to the black people in Prince George's County, and most of them are glad he's gone.
Those were harsh words because the man is deceased. But
he's not deceased yet. He's not deceased.
Not yet.
No, he's not tired. No, he's tired.
Okay.
He's been sick.
Neil asked the question, what does the General Assembly look like without Mike Miller at the helm? So we had our first year.
Free. They look free.
The first year without Mike Miller. And for folks that don't know, Senate President Bill Ferguson was at the helm I think that you saw a number of opportunity that came from it. Obviously, because at this moment, I'm the only person serving on budget and tax. Senate President Ferguson came off of budget and tax. There was an opportunity in reference to a subcommittee chair and a lot of movement within our respective delegation. I also want to lift up that our Senate President Pro Temp is Melanie Griffith, right out there from Prince George's, and have a unique opportunity to learn a great bit from her, because Senator Griffith not only served in the Senate for the last 2 years, but she also served in the House for about 16 years. So she's very knowledgeable and ample and able to do the respective job from that standpoint. But I think that we can all think that these bodies aren't going to operate and thrive without us, but that's not true. Obviously, we can lay a claim, we can make our mark, but the reality is that life continues and it moves on. I think that while the Senate President Emeritus Miller made contributions, I believe that the Senate is still going to thrive under the leadership of Senate President Bill Ferguson. And I think that it's important, Neil, to recognize that we have the most diverse body in the General Assembly ever at this moment. So from not just a gender standpoint of more women, because I always tell folks that it's not just important to have a whole bunch of males or white males, but at the same time, how can we make laws or legislation in reference to women issues if we don't have women at their respective table? But this is also where the Black Caucus has had more members than they've had in years past. We're more than a third of the body at this moment. And I think that what you've seen, because we're more of a third at this body, you see a lot more challenging to policies that's being put forward and making sure that Black folks' issues are being put to the forefront because of this. We saw this with sports betting that was just put forward, and one that we'll be debating in this upcoming legislative session, and looking at what does it look like for Black people to have license in this conversation, and talking about Black wealth. I think that you saw that with a number of issues. I feel like I want to get as many questions in, and I'm gonna stop talking.
Let me add one thing to add.
Just a quick point. Not just women, Senator, mothers. We need women who are mothers, who understand what mothers go through.
Amen to that, Donnie, because I have a 3-year-old. But I know, Senator McCray, you have 4 children as well. So, but let me ask this. Is there enough time to actually get done the legislative agenda? What you've described is completely massive. And I have to say, I was really disappointed that the General Assembly didn't come back together in some sort of a special session. Instead, there was only the executive branch that was really dominating the response to COVID. And I think things could have been better. It's always better with more people coming together, with the branches coming together. Had the General Assembly come back in special session. So are people prepared to extend if they're not done what needs to get done this year?
So, well, and who wants to go to session? Because session is totally changed, Senator.
All right. You gotta let me answer. You gotta let me answer one question, man.
I know you're gonna
have 12 questions.
I want to acknowledge that you have been a tremendous supporter in the Broadway East neighborhood, which is where my nonprofit is. And we're excited to put up our last mile park in the spring that continues to.
Okay, let him answer the question. Come on,
we're going to end, and so I just want to make sure that I acknowledge that that tremendous support and vision that the senator has had to fund things that other people haven't really gotten the vision for, but that are extremely important for Black wealth building.
So try to ask the question in reference to the respective General Assembly and will we have enough time to be able to do the body's work? It's important to recognize that this was the first time that we actually left early since the Civil War. So wow. It's never been done before what happened just this past year. We left towards the end of March and was able to left a lot of unfinished work. The reality is that the real mandate that's there for us is to make sure that we pass a budget and make sure that we adequately fund education is the 2 constitutional pieces that we have to do prior to leaving that space. It's important. I do believe that there is enough time to be able to do a lot of the most challenging things that are in front of us, and doing that from a health pandemic, doing it safe and We have a very older body, which is important to recognize and making sure that we take that into consideration. We have at least 5 or 6 members in the Senate that are over the age of 75. So we want to make sure that we recognize that they are part of our vulnerable population, but still being able to keep them healthy is very, very important. I think there will be by default coming back into a special session, China. If I could just add that this is the year where redistricting is going to take place. And I'm very sure that we're not going to get the numbers back in time for us to be able to do it respectfully. So I'm pretty sure that we'll be coming back for a special session this year, just in general, to deal with redistricting.
So
well, I mean, I'm hoping when you are coming back, I mean, because to me, even though there are a limited constitutional mandates in terms of the budget and so forth, it's just not clear to me how the General Assembly is able to function as a co-equal branch of government if it's not there during the crises. And
you have an echo.
Are not. It seems as though the legislators are frontline workers, so they have to be there, kind of like U.S. Congress.
So, Senator, tell us about how the session will go. What's changed since COVID?
Yep. So just to kind of hone back in on China's question and work my way over to Donnie's question, I think that there are a number of things that had to be taken into consideration. First, in reference to the setup and how do you put forward the safety of the members right there. Once you move past that, there was a lot of uncertainty. I think that Neil asked the question in reference to the budget and what does that look like. I think that shifted dramatically over the last 6 months. I think that there were also the policies that were being put forward. They weren't squarely in reference to how we would go about addressing it. So we didn't know how we were going to go about addressing public police accountability and making sure that these issues were addressed. And strategically, China, if I can be very, very honest, a lot of these policies are probably more than likely going to get vetoed by the governor. So
right.
once that does happen, we have to think about not just passing policy, but do we actually have the numbers to be able to override policy being put forward? So while we can't always have these folks may not be knowledgeable about just the process in general, from a strategic standpoint, we have to make sure that we're not just setting folks up for failure, moving the ball up 20 yards and moving back 25 yards. So those are some of the things that we're taking into consideration. But Donnie asked the question in reference to what does the General Assembly look like when we return back in January. We're going to see that our committee hearings, we're going to see that our voting in committee are going to be held virtually. So I think that this will provide an opportunity for more access to just regular people. Instead of having to come to Annapolis, they're going to find themselves being able to do it via right there from their home, right there from their couch, and be able to experience it from that. So it's going to push us to make sure that we have a more open and transparent.
I love it.
From the General Assembly standpoint. In the House and the Senate, it's going to work a little bit different. In the Senate, we will be coming to the floor for floor votes. At this moment, Tuesdays and Fridays are when we will be going to the floor. So typically we went to the floor every day, Mondays through Fridays, sometimes on Saturdays. Tuesdays and Fridays are where you're going to see us taking up the business of the Senate on the floor itself. The House is going to be a little bit different because they have, in the Senate, you have 47 members. In the House of Delegates, and I always ask my young people when I go to the schools, I say, remember, I'm going to ask you questions afterwards, and then I let them know 47 in the Senate, 141 in the House. Because that body is 3 times the size of our chamber, they are going to be meeting in 2 different places. They're going to be half on the floor and being socially distanced, but then they're going to also be the other half in the House office building under one umbrella, and that's going to be led by Senate President Pro Tem Cherie Sample Hughes over in the House office building, where they'll still be able to engage in that process. We'll be doing testing on Tuesdays and Fridays, so we'll be testing as we go in, and we'll be testing out during this process. I think
is that scary?
It's different. It's very different. I've taken a couple COVID tests, but I have not taken a couple every week. So it is going to be a different experience. Let me be clear, and it's a unique experience. So,
our prayers for you, bro.
With everything that's different, you have the things that you mentally have to work
right
yourself.
And you have a family that you got to go home to in dealing with all that foolishness, right?
The colleague that don't cover their mouth.
And are all the kids virtual learning? You said the 5 and the 6-year-old, are they virtual learning kindergarten?
So everybody in the house is virtual learning, and I think that also just puts a hyper focus on all of those parents that are home. First, working from home is very important, but imagine if you have 3 or 4 that's all using the internet at the same time. Until visualize it and have to be not mandated to do it, but this is the only option that you have to do. These are all the things that we have to think about, because that's a lot of service bandwidth that's being used all at one time.
Right.
Wait, Senator, is there any way we can get BIOS in Baltimore City, or is there any way we can create a better environment for internet connectivity? Because Baltimore City sucks. Baltimore County has BIOS. What's the problem?
Yep, Donnie's absolutely right. And one of the things that I try my best to do is speak, especially to where regular folks will be able to understand it. So there's a franchise agreement that exists exclusively with Comcast throughout the city of Baltimore. So the franchise agreement is one of the parts. There are a number of these work groups, Donnie, that exist. One of them where Shanisha Sauls with the Baltimore Community Foundation is kind of leading up, and how we address these types of issues. And these aren't something that we're going to figure out in 3 months or 6 months. These are long-term issues that's being put there. And what does it look like from a philanthropic standpoint? How much should city government put forward? How much should state government put forward? And how much does the private sector owe to this respect?
Right. Right. They've been taken all along.
Yeah, that's been happening.
When does the franchise agreement expire, or what's the penalty for breaking it?
You know what? So it's local government. So usually, typically, things that are in my purview, I'm very familiar with it, but I don't know at this moment because it's an agreement made with the city of Baltimore.
But the mayor's your friend. Does he know?
I would hope that the mayor knows he's the executive. I'm a state senator, so
you said he's good
on the state government. Say that again.
Well, okay.
So let me be clear. I'm not.
Why are you backing off? Why are you backing off, Donnie?
I'm not familiar with in reference to when the agreement ends, but I do know that it is the franchise agreement that we have with Comcast and the.
No, we very much have to give Mayor Scott a chance. We're very clear. We have to give him a chance. Other mayors have gone and have embarrassed our city. People in the legislature have embarrassed our city, going to prison for 15 grand, 35 grand. So, Senator, these are tough questions, but we do love you.
It's very important because the questions that you're asking, the public thinking that. So while they're tough, I think I have a responsibility. I'm going to find out when it is. Like I say, even if it's not, I always say, especially our constituents, a lot of them don't know who their city council, state delegate, state senator is, but they know when they got a problem, they want to unelect you if you ain't help them get that problem. So I will get the answer to that. I always say, whether it's federal, state, or city, I don't care what it is. I just try my best to help people.
The question is, I asked that, and somebody said to me that there was not an exclusive that was given to Comcast, that there was some other kind of contractual agreement. So as you start looking for that, the question would be, for me, would be, why can't several entities come into this city at different entrance points?
Yeah.
So tell us about Mayor Scott. What can we expect from the next 4 years? Why are you supportive of him? And congratulations on getting one of the youngest mayors ever.
I'm just texting my next appointment. I'm telling Chris Cavey, the secretary's appointment, that I'm gonna be late for our 11 o'clock at the moment.
That's so kind of you, Senator. We really appreciate it. And we know that you don't want nobody bad-mouthing you about you getting off the phone.
It was such a good discussion that I lost track of time. Let me be
and we love it. I'm grateful.
I think Donnie's question was in reference to Mayor Scott, I believe. And what was the rest of the question, Donnie? Just if you could.
What do you foresee for the next 4 years for the city of Baltimore? What would you like to see?
Yeah, so I think that the 3 things that I've always think is very important: being intentional, education, and public safety. I think that without these issues, I think that we're going to continue to go down the wrong path that we're in. I'm very enthused and very motivated in reference to Mayor Scott. As Donnie stated, he is not just my mayor, he was my councilman, but he's also my friend.
Mhm.
And one of the first to endorse you.
Say that again?
And one of the first to endorse your run for Senate.
One of the few to endorse. You got to remember when I was running for Senate, and I'm not going to divert, it was a lot of folks that didn't believe that we could climb that tall mountain. So I never had.
I stood with you.
Yeah, no, you're right. I just never had. So I've been able to achieve a lot of things in my life, and I'm a very big proponent that you can do anything that you put your mind to. But I saw a number of people that I always thought that had me at interest or cared about me tell me what I couldn't accomplish, and I think that was hard for me to. Well, I didn't. I just never had. I never had endured something like that. But I'm gonna go back to the question that you asked in reference to Mayor Scott. I know that he's going to be vigilant about our young people, our seniors, and our vulnerable communities. I know that one of the things while I stay in schools, I love that these young people know him by name, they know him by face, they have a connection with him. And I'll talk about a young man when we were at the poll. And I said this in the speech when I announced Brandon. This young man had graduated from Mervo. He had, and I said his mom had said she was voting for Brandon because of her son had told her to vote for Brandon. But he remembered that Brandon had attended his games, that Brandon was at his schools. And this young man is 19 years of age, but that had such a lasting impact that he's been one of the largest influencers. And I think that that's one of the things that Brandon has always done well. I think that he's a son of Baltimore, such as yourself. He loves it, and I know that he's going to put a full effort in reference to making sure that we thrive. But it's also us that have to make sure that we're holding him accountable. I think that me and I keep saying Brandon, but me, my friend, the mayor, have had tough conversations. So we do. It is okay to disagree. And it is okay to push, because folks need to hear that in order to be successful, in order to be your best. You have to push and pull in order to get that out. So I think that it is incumbent upon all of us to make sure that we all have that responsibility to hold him accountable, to push him where he needs to be pushed. I just want to lift up the team that he's also putting around him. He got this young brother, I can't remember the CEO, Chris.
Alexander or something.
Chris, I got Chris Cavey on my mind because I'm supposed to be in a meeting with him, but it's not
the
Chris.
city manager, the guy from
the new administrator.
The new administrator. Chris is very, very sharp from that standpoint. It's a young lady, Natasha Mehu, who he's brought on as his government relations person. But Brandon also has a responsibility.
Excuse me, it's Christopher
Shorter.
Shorter.
Yep, that's it. But Brandon also has a responsibility to be intentional because Baltimore deserves it. And what I enjoy about, I think that every move we have to watch and make sure that intentionality does not remove itself. But even when he started to formulate his transition committee, if you look at the 9 folks that made up of this transition committee in reference to what was the ethnicity, in reference to what was the age, what was some of the creativity. When we talk about Ricard Jones, when we talk about Wes Moore, when we talk about Danielle Terrain, when we talk about Brittany, there was so many people there that some of them I didn't know, but I knew that the makeup of that body was very, very, very intentional.
Will they look out for Black people?
I think that one of the things is that these are people that I know have already been putting in the work. I think that their resume speaks for themselves. When you talk about Danielle Terrain, when you talk about Ricard Jones, when you talk about a number of the folks that are on these committees, I think that their work speak for themselves. And a number of them aren't over the age of 40, but in these positions of influence in reference to resources and dollars to make sure that they look out for Black people.
And some of them live in Baltimore County. So I was a little disturbed by that. And I think it's one thing to have them participate, but another thing on a committee that is making decisions and suggestions for residents of this city. So I had a real problem with a couple of those members that don't live within the confines. I think that
I gotta respond back to Miss Marsha's question, because that's very intentional. Folks don't always think that we can find the talent in the city, and I know that that talent is there. So when you looked at that, I could only name 2 of the 9 that did not live in the city, respectfully, Miss Marsha. So I'm gonna run through that list real quick. So when you
wait, before you run through the list, let me add this on top of it, because I have to push back on the Son of Baltimore hashtag, because my concern is everyone says Son of Baltimore, Son of Baltimore. However, when we hire from outside of Baltimore consistently and persistently. Chris Shorter is not from Baltimore.
No, he's from Texas.
He's great. I hear amazing things about him. The police chiefs, never from Baltimore. So consistently, we're bringing in people from the outside. And I think having outside exposure is excellent, but I think it's not consistent with the Son of Baltimore hashtag.
So let me be clear. I'm a son of Baltimore. So that's
and I'm a daughter of Maryland.
So you all are hitting me from different points. I'm going to hit Ms. Marsha, then I'm gonna come back over to
I think it's
China. So when you look at Alicia, she lives in the Frankfurt community. When you look at Wes, he lives here. When you look at Danielle Terrain, she lives here. When you look at Brittany, she lives here. When you look at myself, I live here. It's 3 that I'm missing, because right now I've just went through Tory. So the football player, he's one of the 2 that I was saying that doesn't live in the city of Baltimore. And Mike Hankin. So when you look at the I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on her name, but she chairs College Bound. She lives in the city. Part of it. So it's only 2 out of the 9 that don't live.
But it's also not only who's chairing the committees, but the committee members as well.
I think that yep, and because I helped to frame that, it's very important that I take responsibility for that. I want to say at least 70% of that group actually lives in our respective city, because that was one of the important points that meant something to me in reference to what does it reflect, and also where do they reside was very, very important to me. So I want to say that 70% of that body lives in our respective city, or doing something in our respective city. And I think that you have to also have some outside input. So you do have to have the other adjacent groups. But I think that what you've seen in the past is where they've dominated the conversation. Right. Is where I'm trying to get to, where they were the majority making decisions in reference to our city.
Correct.
Like of the city, or didn't really know the city. And I think that that's just challenging for me. And then I'll move over to China's question. I think that one of the things is that while I'm a son of Baltimore, I do recognize that people that are not from this city can contribute to this city. So as long as they do live here, they are contributing in some form of a great manner, piece of it. But I do think that it's important to have balance. And I think that balance should be reflected in that body. So I think that that's all I could say to that piece of it, is that the most important thing is that Chris Shorter isn't going to be trying to do the job from Texas, from Prince George's, from Anne Arundel County. Do it from right here, so that you see the challenges that we're going through with we're not getting our recycling picked up, or you see the public safety issues, or you see the concentration of liquor stores and things of that nature.
Well, I'm so glad that you're good friends with him.
Chris, though, we grew up we both came up through the same channels working through DC government.
I think he's a sharp brother. I think he's a sharp brother.
What made the mayor decide to bring in a city administrator? I thought that was interesting.
That was one way I was in the middle. So I always try my best to have a very, very open mind. So I wasn't there in the beginning. I didn't walk into that one. I was like, hey, why we need another $100,000, $200,000 position when all the CEO look like to me is a deputy mayor. But as he started to explain in reference to how the other surrounding jurisdictions, how other big cities are operating, majority of them have the person that's running that day-to-day operations and making sure.
Administratively, is that what you mean?
Yeah, from an administratively piece of it, but they have the long-term outlook. So you have the respective mayor, but you also have someone that's making sure that the fundamentals are actually happening, and that we're planning. We're looking at not just Baltimore City from a year-to-year basis, but a 3-year, 5-year, 10-year outlook. And I think that that's the responsibility of the city administrator, especially with some of these very large agencies, Baltimore City Housing, DPW, plague with a number of challenges. We have to get someone that professionally can kind of come in here and making sure that we're taking a look at this from a long-term standpoint.
And seeing a bigger,
Seeing it from
broader
a bigger picture. And we're not the only jurisdiction. When you look right there next door to us, Stacey Rogers is the CEO for Baltimore County. You look at a number of the other jurisdictions that do the same thing, Prince George's, even our other urban jurisdictions that are very similar to Baltimore City.
And size and scope.
Yep, in size and scope, they all are taking an outlook at this. So I think that was one of the ones, and like I said, I think it's important to push and pull because I had an open mind, but I just did not walk into it. But as long as the mayor is able to explain why he's moving forward and can articulate that message, I'm open to doing something different. I think that just because you're doing something different doesn't mean that it's wrong.
No, exactly right. But I just wondered how it even began. So that's a good thing. Thank you.
Well, Senator, thank you for taking time out to join us. Any closing thoughts, any contact information, and thank you.
Yep. First, I just want to say thank you, Donnie. I want to say thank you because I got to meet some new folks and I got to see some old folks.
Wait a minute.
But
wait a minute. Wait a minute. Now I would walk over to your house.
Well, you are always beautiful to me, Miss Marsha, but I just want to say,
you're a 3-year-old. I'm young and fresh. Who's old? Who's old, Senator McCray?
Nobody.
I think he meant you.
But I truly value
Neil and Donnie.
Yeah,
I am staying out of this one. It's normally me putting my foot in it, so I am just. I'm gonna get a drink and just watch.
Let me be clear.
I'm gonna give you the side eye.
A very strong value in the relationships that we have in front of us, and look forward to continuing to establish those that are there. I just want to lift up Donnie. I just want to say thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for the work that you do because I think that you challenge each and every one of us in the manner that we need to be challenged in. I think it is very tough just for any Black business owner to operate, not just in the city of Baltimore, state of Maryland, but across the country. But you've done it years on top of years on top of years. And you've done it very well. I thank you for telling our story. When I think about institutions such as yourself, I think about the National Great Blacks and Wax Museum. I think about those folks that have been there traditionally, and we need to make sure that we elevate that piece of it. So I just want to, I could speak on and on and on, but all that I'm trying my best to say is thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you for challenging me years ago. You don't support young people, huh? Oh! He stuck me up. He said, "You gonna support me?" Love, how can people contact you, Senator?
Yep. You can. I'm on all social mediums. So it's Senator Cory McCray on Twitter, Facebook, and I'm on Instagram at Cory McCray. For those folks that use the phone, you can always call 410-841-3165. But most importantly, I think that it's important to recognize that I answer each and every email myself. So it's not someone filtering through my emails. I just want to make sure that I put an eye on each and everything that comes through my office. And my email address is Cory, CORY, McCray, MCCRAY, at senate.state.md.us. Thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator, there are some comments online. You may want to look at the page, including Nicole Orr, Benjamin Brookins, and I found out that you and I have a mutual friend, Ateem Lee.
Oh, yeah. No, Ateem, my homeboy. He a fellow electrician, too.
Yes, sir. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. You've been watching the BmoreNews Morning Show, and we'll see you next week, tomorrow. Up to date, down tomorrow. Thank you, China. I could hear you. I could hear you. Do your day and everything will follow. Nothing to it but to do it. I got to do it. Oh. Did everybody get their comments in? Because Kavette got quiet and Neil got quiet too. Was there anything you wanted to add? I know you didn't get dolled up, Kavette, just a smile.
Oh, I got a chance to comment. I'm good. And I was very happy with what I heard in response to the questions to the others' comments as well.
Kavette, how can people get in touch with you?
I am Kavette on Instagram and Facebook. You can also go to my website at www.moreandmorelife. I am a financial liberator, and I guide people women mainly, on their journey to self-sufficiency by teaching them how to transform your mind and transform your money.
Good deal. Neil Dubo, welcome to the show. Welcome back, I should say. You've been a part of our previous broadcast on Radio 1. How have you been?
I'm doing all right. And I have to tell you, it's been an absolute privilege being with everybody this morning. And I found myself thinking, in what has been, generally speaking, a pretty horrific year, it is so great to see people remain engaged and not allow what has been depression, lowercase d, to kind of set in and stop people from doing the things that are meaningful to them, that they care about. And even as we sit here 3 days before a new year, you guys are as engaged and you care as much and you're as enthusiastic as you were this time last year before we knew any of this was going to happen. And I think that's incredible. And it's a testament to all of you, especially you, Donnie. And I'm copying your haircut.
Done deal. What type of law do you practice? I'm a solo practitioner, personal injury and malpractice. I've been practicing law almost 20 years. The Pikesville lawyer. That's
Pikesville lawyer, but not for much longer. We're moving offices to Timonium in February. Found ourselves some new digs. I've been very blessed. I've been rated as one of the top 100 trial lawyers in the state of Maryland by the National Trial Lawyers Association, which is a great honor. Love trying a case. The courts haven't been open much this year, but appreciate you having me on. If people need to reach me, if somebody needs help, number is 443-275-6345. And again, I appreciate you having me on. I hope to do it again in the new year.
One more time, phone number.
443-275-6345.
Good deal. China Boterell, you're not the only lawyer on the panel.
That's right. And that's a great thing, I think. I'm China Boterell. You can reach me at china@actimpact.org. I run a nonprofit, American Communities Trust, right here in Baltimore City. And our focus is getting small businesses into low-income neighborhoods, because without those small businesses, we know that those neighborhoods are not actually on a path to have economic viability. So we want to make sure that in addition to the programs and services, that our neighborhoods are actually getting small businesses. And thank you very much.
And you have rental space available, correct?
We have one last space to lease. It can be anywhere from 2,200 square feet to 6,600 square feet. And so we're especially looking for, I'm always interested to talk with small minority businesses and figure out what is it that you need. Do I have something that can work for you? How can I make what I have work for you? So please definitely call me if this is something that's resonating with you. My number is 410-989-1607.
And let me just praise the Queen, Marsha Reeves Jews. Some time ago, you pulled a bunch of us together. You said that we're going to do a radio network, the WKIM. And for those who may not know, this show is merely a continuum, part of a continuum that Marsha and a group of us started years ago. So we thank you for your contributions and your final thought.
Well, thank you, Donnie, for creating this space, and it's wonderful. And thank all of you for participating. And this is really, I think, critical for us to be able to have a community of people and voices. And I'm just grateful to be part of this and grateful to see you all here. And it was very nice meeting you, lawyer from Pikesville.
The feeling was mutual. A very young Marsha.
Right. Well, you still live in Pikesville.
Nice area.
A very special thank you to Edible Arrangements of Govans and of Randallstown, Mr. Kevin and his wife Kathleen Setzer. Thank you, everyone. Also, Billy Murphy Law. We can't forget Murphy, Falcone, and Murphy. 410-539-6500. Thank you, everyone. China Boterell, this is for you. Up to date. Down tomorrow. Do your day and everything will follow. Nothing to it but to do it, or gots to do it.
Do it.
Regardless of how I feel. I am somebody. I am a brother's keeper. Good morning.
Amen.
Good morning.
Ujima, enjoy Kwanzaa this week.
I'm going to get that in a Build-A-Bear, so help me.
Absolutely. Have an amazing day.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Good morning.